Hey everybody, I did find out a way to navigate the technical issues here, and here I am seeking to speak to all my friends at Biblical Lifestyle Center. Um, we have a very special Parsha today. Please let me know if you're hearing everything okay. I want to make sure my sound is working, make sure my video is working, and please respond to me if you hear anything, if anyone's out there watching. We will be discussing Parsha Vayigash today. Vayigash is the 11th of the 54 Parshas of the entire Torah. It is the next to last parsha of the book of Genesis, or Bereshit as it is written in Hebrew. I see, yeah, good, all good. Rosemary says all good. Linda says Shabbat Shalom, and I say Shabbat Shalom to you. To all those who will join us, thank you so much for letting us come into your home today. There is no regular gathering of the Biblical Lifestyle Center today due to a bunch of absences and visits, but we are getting a chance to visit online, and I thank you all over the world for joining us, for being part of our family, and for doing that which we do on Shabbat. We celebrate, we delight in our Sabbath, and we draw the holiness energy, we draw the joy energy and the peace energy out of the seventh day that God blessed and made holy, and we spread that abroad in our homes, in our hoods, and throughout the world. So Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Now, I would like to kind of address some of the issues that are facing us. This is the Parsha of, I call it forgiveness, reconciliation, and reunification. This is a time during the window we fell last week in Parsha Miketz. This prophetic aspect of Torah began to kick in big time, and we fell through the looking glass to the end of days. And at the end of days, we began to see trade for us like on a stage with Joseph and his brothers, Yosef and his brothers, and the things of Egypt, and Egypt being the beast, and Joseph being this Messiah figure that will arise. Both naturally, he is a real person, and he will arise in prototypical form as the Messiah promised in the Torah, and he will accomplish his first coming, and in his second coming we see the matters of the Parsha, how he does one thing at one time and another thing at another time, and puts them both together beautifully, the messianic vision, the messianic image. So in Parsha Vayigash, what we do, we start out with this great chasm between the Messiah and his family, the brothers, and his father. His father has seemingly been deprived of him, and Joseph has been deprived of his father. And what we're going to find in this parsha is a wonderful secret, a beautiful, as it were, of how the Holy One intends to heal the brokenness of his covenant people, and to reignite them, inspire them, reawaken, so to speak, to their ultimate purpose. And in the context, or in as a part of it, he will reunify and turn the hearts of the father to the children, and the children to the father, portrayed beautifully in Parsha Vayigash. And they are both a real story that is part of our swelling testimony of the goodness of our King in the days past. He has been faithful in all generations, and also the faith we hold on to, the hope we cling to for the time that comes, that he will repeat this process over and over again, both in the present in which we and our children and our children's children will live, and also in the ultimate at the end of days when all the world falls through the looking glass. And we are at that stage. So here we are, Parsha 11, Vayigash, and we are talking about forgiveness and reconciliation. We're talking about turning hearts, and we're talking about reclaiming identity and purpose and connectivity, and reuniting with the grand plan. What is the grand plan? very well if you've been listening anything that I've been teaching for the longest time. It awakened in me, and I can't stop talking about it. So forgive me if it gets boresome or tiresome to you. It never gets tiresome to me. The grand plan of the Holy One is for the redemption of mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline, family by family, household by household. And also, not just that, but also to restore all of creation, acre by acre, region by region, continent by continent, to its original intended Edenic state of beauty and of fruitfulness and of shalom and of harmonious ecosystem that brings about the honor and the glory of the manifestation of all that he planned and designed for us. So as we begin this parsha today, I want to tell you it runs from Genesis chapter 44 and verse 18 through Genesis chapter 47 and verse 27. Now, one thing we don't always get a chance to talk about, but I want to kind of at least, is the fact that along with the readings from the Torah that we do each week on the Sabbath, and in preparation for the Sabbath each day, we also have readings from that's the Haftarah, as it's called from the traditions. But it basically is that we complement, we supplement, we augment the readings from the Torah with readings that correspond to the Torah portion, the sections and the issues that we're talking about in the Torah from the prophets. And the historical Haftarah is from Ezekiel chapter 37, particularly the second part of the chapter. If you know 37, it begins with the vision of the valley of dry bones. This is important to me this year because at the beginning, Rosh Hashanah, and through the days of awe, the Holy One began to download to me this whole vision that this coming year is a year of bone unto bone. Prophesy, Son of Man, prophesy to the bones. Can these bones live? And so that part of Ezekiel 37 is radically important to me. Now, a second phase of that is what our Haftarah is about, and that's 15 through 28. That's the verses, I should say. Verses 15 through 28. And that is the vision of it's called two sticks. These two sticks, one for the house of Ephraim and one for the house of Yehuda, Judah, and the house of Joseph and the house of Yehuda. This reconciliation, this recombination, this joint becoming one, a unification process that will take place. So I will not spend more time talking about the Haftarah. I encourage you to dig into these Haftarot, the plural of Haftarahs, Haftarot, and to begin to look into this, and let this inspire you and give meaning and purpose and perspective. The Torah readings, what you read, not just what you read in the Torah. It's not just a story, although it's a wonderful story. It is a bigger picture, and the prophets help to unveil the larger picture. Okay, so with regard to that, let's kind of get started with the process. Where did we end last week? As we fell through the looking glass and we found Joseph being taken away into bondage and slavery in, first of all, the house of Potiphar, and then subsequently in a dungeon. We left it. Actually, him being brought up last week, he was brought out into his second coming of glory and brought into the Pharaoh's house and made the second in command of all Egypt and given authority. He's given a new name. He was basically he looked like an Egyptian. He didn't look like the brother. And so when the brothers came to buy grain, we had the vision of Pharaoh and his dream. His dream was of 7 years of famine. He didn't know what it was, but it was 7 years of famine, followed by 7 years of plenty. That was the catalyst that brought Joseph out of the prison. The cupbearer remembered reciting his dreams and interpreting his dreams before, and so he brought him forth to Pharaoh. And Joseph gave the interpretation of the 7 years of famine, followed by 7 years of plenty, that is, followed by 7 years of famine. And then he gave him the plan for them to shepherd, to take care of the people, not only the people of Egypt, but the people of the world during the 7 years of famine. Now, one thing I do want to say about this is that the leaders that you can trust are those who have a vision for 7 years or a extended period of famine. Those who have only a vision of prosperity, those who have only a vision that somehow that all is going to keep getting better and better and better, they may be honorable men in some ways, but they cannot lead you into the next phase. A true leader in the kingdom, a true leader for the people of God, must be one who has a vision for what it's like to suffer, for what it means to be in dire straits, and for people to die and their children to be dying because of famine. And so this first Pharaoh has this unique ability, but given by the Holy One, to understand. And so he didn't have to, for his own family, his own sake, he probably could have made it through 7 years of famine anyway. But he had a vision of what it was going to do to his people and to the people of the world for 7 years of famine to come. And that is why he was a faithful, trustworthy person for Joseph to come into and serve. Now, generations will pass, and as generations come, you know what's going to happen. As people begin to lose the vision, and this happens in every country, in every culture, in every household. When people rise up, when a generation rises up that does not have a vision for how miserable 7 years of famine or an extended period of lack or deprivation can be, and the toll it takes on a civilization, then they may be honorable men in their way or honorable persons in their time. They may have good ideas, but they cannot lead the covenant people. The covenant people must have a vision for people hurting and understand what that means. Now, so we ended it last week with a twofold event. Twice the children of Yaakov, the 10 brothers of Joseph, and we're leaving Benjamin out of it for the second. The 10 brothers came to see the man they knew as Zaphanat-Paneah, this Egyptian viceroy who was actually Joseph in disguise, perhaps even a bit of self-disguise, but he was not who they thought. They didn't know he was Joseph. So they came the second time. He had ordered them to not come back unless they brought their younger brother, who they didn't understand his interest, but they did. They finally had to comply. Yaakov finally had to say, if I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved, and he sent this young son, Benjamin, to this Egyptian lord. And so they went, and when that happened, they got their grain. They had this wonderful feast. It seemed like all was going well. And as they headed back with their saddle bags filled with grain, they were accosted on the road. It appeared that Benjamin, the youngest, apparently the evidence was there. He had stolen. He had abused the hospitality of Viceroy, and he had stolen his silver cup and he'd taken the cup, and lo and behold, the accusation proved to be true. The cup was found. A search was conducted. The silver cup was indeed found in Benjamin's saddlebag, and they were exposed. The brothers, like, what do we do now? And so that's where we are. They are brought back, all of them. The viceroy, Zaphanat-Paneah, said, you guys all just go on back to your family, take your food, and I'll keep this one here. He will be my slave. And then we have this week's Parsha. That's where we ended off. That was the context. So it begins. Yehuda last week said, what can we say to my Lord? He had been brought to them. They didn't want Benjamin to stay. They didn't know what happened, how Benjamin was found guilty of this. It should stir your mind back to the false accusation that Potiphar's wife made about Joseph, and how she had all the evidence that it was true when it wasn't true. Or the false accusation that was made regarding how Joseph was disappeared, because they had the garment, they had the proof, but it wasn't true. And so now we have this whole issue again, repeating itself. What is necessary for a reconciliation? Sometimes it feels like it's so painful, so hurtful, but yes, this is what happens. Yehuda says, what can we say to my Lord? And what can we do? How can we clear ourselves? How can we justify ourselves, might be a better way to put it. For God has found out the iniquity of your servants, not just the iniquity of Benjamin, which really wasn't there at all, the iniquity of your servants. He's talking about all of his brothers. Here we are, my Lord's slaves. That wasn't the plan at all, was it? Here we are, my Lord's slaves, both we and also him with whom the cup was found. But Zaphanat-Paneach then speaks, and this is how last week's parsha ended. He said, "Far be it from me that I should do so. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my slave. And as for you, go in shalom to your father." Oh, this is it brings an interesting pause. That's where we left off last week. This week, a traumatic event, a dramatic moment. They either go back to their father and explain as best they can to him what happened to Benjamin. They've done it, tried to do it before. They had to do it with Shimon last time because Shimon was kept in bondage during the period of their last exit. And they had to do it whenever Joseph was taken and sold into slavery. So the third time, can they do it a third time? And so we see, how are you going to respond, Yehuda? Yehuda, how are you going to respond when all the cards are stacked against you? When you seem to have no hope, what will you be? What will be your preservation? What will be your impetus? Will it be your self-preservation? Will it be your self-justification? Will it be your will being done, your way being accomplished? Some of the sages even say when Yehuda did the next thing he did, he actually had reached an agreement with his brothers. They were going to attack and kill Yosef, son of Zaphanat-Paneach, and free Benjamin forcefully. I find that difficult to believe in light of what we're saying, but I'll leave that to you to determine. Here's the way Yehuda approached. Here's what he did. The Hebrew says, Vayigash elav Yehuda. Then Yehuda came very close to him. Vayomer bi Adonai, if you please, your highness, Yedaber ha'avedeka davar be'oznei. Let your servant now whisper a matter in your ear. And I'll go on English. Do not be harsh with your servant, for you are like Pharaoh. My Lord inquired of your servants whether we still had a father or another brother. And then he proceeds. Yehuda proceeds to lay out part of the history of how they have interacted with this Zaphanat-Paneach character. How much Yehuda knew at this time, it's obvious he did not know this was Joseph. But he was the creator of the universe, the God of Yitzhak and of Yaakov, his father, was indeed working on him. He had seen this happen before in his life, back whenever he went off to live his life of profligacy and debauchery of the Canaanites near Adullam. He had seen the Holy One work things around to where he was revealed, his will was revealed through the birth of two twins from Tamar. And he got a history of that. So a little bit of that history works. And he's beginning to see this is working. So he tells the story, retells the story, and he begins to focus on the pain of the father and the suffering that he would endure if they have to go back to Canaan, to Beersheba, the camp of the covenant people, and they do not have Benjamin. He talks about how his father would go down to his grave in misery and agony, and he knows he's beginning to push these points. He said he has a vision for the suffering, an understanding of the suffering, and so he then begins to say, I became surety for this young man Benjamin. I became his surety. And I will be his slave in your place. I will take his penalty. I will take his sentence upon myself. So we see this messianic vision now catching from Joseph into Yehuda. And Yehuda catches this idea that no, I will be the substitute. I will take the pain. I will take the punishment. I will take all the pain, the suffering that comes with this. I will be your slave. Let the young man go free, that I might not have to live with what suffering the father have. Well, that's kind of the basics of the story. He offers himself as a substitute for the young man in order that his father would not suffer. This is enough to then prove to Yosef, Zaphanat Paneach, that it is time to break the fantasy, to expose the reality. And so that's what basically happens. He personally awakens to his connection and his love for Yehuda. He feels the same thing that Yehuda feels. His father's suffering. He doesn't want his father or the rest of the family to suffer by virtue of his will being done, his being right, his being better than they are, more morally superior, culturally more awakened than they are. No, he wants to do what is necessary to alleviate the suffering. So he comes out and he reveals himself. Ani Yosef, I am Yosef, your brother. Does our father live? Does our father live? And he begins to talk to them about that, and they are shocked. And he says, look, guys, you in, but the Holy One is the one who's doing the working here. And he's working all things together for good. And so this was for the redemption of many. And they weep on each other's shoulders. And then he reveals and reunifies or reconciles with his brothers. This first reconciliation is very important. But there's another reconciliation and a reunification that's going to take place. And that's the reunification between Joseph, the son, and then Benjamin, his son, and Shimon, his son, all the different sons, and Yaakov, the father. Again, it is real. It really happened. It's part of our national history. It's part of our cultural milieu. It's part of who we are, that this is a part of our past, but it's also a part of our future. We, the sons, all the estranged sons and daughters of the father will be reconciled. The hearts of the father will be turned to the sons and the daughters, and the sons and the daughters' heart will be turned to the father. And this thing that Malachi prophesies will take place. Then there's the long trip back home. Pharaoh issues a decree. He hears about it. Can you imagine the news? I mean, to Pharaoh, even though he had an understanding of human suffering, I don't know if he really had a sense of who Joseph was, what a Hebrew is, what the covenant means. And certainly to Pharaoh, his primary interest was in Egypt and preserving the country and then letting it be the greatest it could possibly be. So now he's faced with the idea that this young man that was serving his purposes is a real human being. I call him, he's a real boy. And that he has brothers, and he has a father. He has relatives. There are other Hebrews out there. And he didn't even think about that, I'm sure, before. But suddenly now he's aware of this. And he has to make a decision. What does he want to do with these Hebrews? How do you want to deal with people of the covenant who have a totally transformed mindset and viewpoint and reason to be alive? I'm not sure how much of that he knew. But he issues a decree, as pharaohs are wont to do. And basically the decree said, let's collect the whole set. That's kind of my way of taking it. You see these years, everybody wants to be a collector. So he's going to collect all the Hebrews. Bring them all. If this one's been such a blessing to Egypt, to my people, and to me, let's bring them all. Maybe they all will be. But Joseph knows that's not going to work out quite that way. And so he sends the brothers back home and he says, Pharaoh's decree is that you take these Egyptians' wagons, these agalot that Pharaoh sends with you, and that you just bring your family and leave all your Hebrew things, all your Hebrew stuff behind. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Pharaoh says, I'll set you up with the finest. You'll live off the fat of the land. And just, in other words, don't bring any of this Hebrew stuff with you. It's not welcome here. You are, but it's not. And we see this repeating itself over again in every culture we ever live in, and many households that we go to and cities that we live in. You can come, you're welcome, as long as you contribute to the economy here or to our agendas, but don't bring your Hebrew stuff in here. Well, that was the decree of Pharaoh. And the sons, the brothers go back home, and they begin to tell everybody a story. Wow, can you imagine being a fly on the wall? I mean, can you imagine being one of the children of Yehuda, or one of the children of any of the other brothers who have always thought your father, was some sort of hero, and was always good, and thought Joseph was, the kid who just wandered away from home and got killed, and was the bad guy. And all of a sudden, now they have to tell the entire story, because they're going to find out Joseph is alive, and he's going to tell his story, and everyone's going to know. And so, can you imagine the awkwardness of telling the real story, revealing the truth? And the brothers confess, and they tell their story, and there's a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth. And then the question is, well, what do we do now? Do we follow Pharaoh's decree? Do we pick and choose? Do we cherry pick Pharaoh's decree? And that's really what they wind up doing. They take the wagons, and they all leave, all 69. There was one in Egypt, and the rest of them come. There were 3 in Egypt. There was Joseph, there was Manasseh, and there was Ephraim, who was their sons. And so the 67 come on wagons. Here's the difference. They brought their Hebrew stuff. We can't. Well, that's who we are. We are who we are. We have a certain culture that we bring with us. We have a certain viewpoint and worldview that we bring with us. We have a certain connection, an emunah, a faith and trust in the Creator of the universe to bring about good in all situations. We have this covenant with the Creator, and therefore we cannot leave our Hebrew things behind. So they cherry pick between Pharaoh's decree, and they come, and as they leave, they pack up the ancestral camp at Beersheba. They go into an exile, as was prophesied back in Genesis 15. The entire group's going to go into as the Holy One had given Abraham a vision when the smoking lamp passed through the pieces, that they would go into and be oppressed for 400 years or for 4 generations in this process, as it may be, however you interpret that. But then that they would come out, and the Holy One would inflict judgment again, reaping what you sow. How you treat these people will generate a harvest for good or for evil. And so the Egyptians would use an evil harvest eventually, an evil planting, an evil sowing, and would get an evil harvest out of this process. But out of this, the nation would be born. There would be great wealth come out with them, and they would be established, given a grubstake to found the actual kingdom of heaven beachhead in Eretz Israel. That would be what would happen. But we're not there yet. We have a listing of the names of the people that go to Egypt, and then we have, before that, we have this God encounter, the final God encounter of the book of Genesis. We have learned to appreciate the times when heaven breaches the finity barrier, and the Creator of the universe manifests himself vocally with words, or with his presence in some form or another in manifestation. We have become comfortable with this throughout this book of Genesis, of Bereshit. I hope you are comfortable with it in your life, my brothers and sisters. I hope this idea that the Holy One is not confined to an external world somewhere that you can't see, that he actually is directly involved in your life and will directly intervene in your life. And he will actually present himself to you in multiple forms, many ways, in ways that show his shepherding care and his gentle guidance, and yet his firm discipline as necessary. These are the ways in which we've come to be configured. We're going to have the last of those encounters in the book of Genesis, and that will be the 46 verses 1 through 6, chapters 46 through verses 1 through 6, and the Holy One will appear to Yaakov in a dream. It all started for Yaakov in a dream, as you recall back in Genesis 28, as he was on his way out of Israel the first time, out of the land of Israel the first time, to go up to his first exile in the house of Laban in the east. He had a night vision. He had a dream. And you remember the vision. He saw angels ascending and descending on a great staircase. And above the great staircase, he saw the Creator of the universe actually there. And the creator of the universe spoke to him and made promises to him. Well, it's going to be a bookend. The second end of that process for Yaakov takes place in Genesis 46, verses 1 through 6. And there are four basic promises. First of all, he calls him Yaakov, Yaakov. It's a fascinating thing. He already renamed him Israel. But he wants to speak to the child. He wants to speak to the covenant one that was born, the flesh aspect of who Yaakov is, because he's going to speak to his flesh. He's going to speak to his natural being, and then that's going to flow out of the things that go in the spirit with the Israel manifestation of who he is. So what he says, I am the God of your father. I am the God, the sovereign God of your father. Elohim, Elohei, Avika, your father. And he says, do not be afraid. Lo, or altira. Don't be afraid. Don't have fear. Don't fear what? Don't fear descending into Egypt. Don't fear descending into the straits, the narrow areas, the areas of tightness, the areas of constriction that you're about to go into. This is going to be like a birth canal to you. It's going to be like you're going into a womb, but you're going to then come out of the womb. I'm going to make of you a great nation there. I will make your nation become a great nation there. This is your womb and your incubator. Don't be afraid to go down there. And then he says, I will go down there with you. This is the Holy One speaking to Yaakov in this dream. I will go down to Egypt with you. He actually says to Mizraim, I will go down with you. Wherever we are, he is with us. This witness process, this witness concept, this witness reality is something that will prevent us from losing hope, prevent us from losing a sense of purpose and direction, and getting all distracted and caught up in the fears and the worries and the anxieties and the outrages of the societies we are devolved into or sent into. Well, that's what's going to happen. He says, I will be with you, and I will bring you back up from there. That's not only will he be with us while we're in our stage of pressure and stress and anxiety and danger. He will be with us and bring us out of those things. And then he makes a personal promise to Yaakov's flesh that the hand of Yosef will be upon your eyes. Yosef will be your vision. And Yosef will close your eyes in death. I know there's one of the ways in which that's looked at. But Yosef and he will be intimately connected. And this is, I like to use Yosef both personally for Yaakov, but Messiah for Israel. Messiah, you will be intimately connected with Messiah's vision. And your vision will be tied to his vision. And that's the plan of the Holy One for his covenant people. Even in times, especially in times of tightness, constriction, restriction, whenever we're under extreme pressure, under persecution, under disfavor with nations and kingdoms in that process. All right, then we have Yehuda sent ahead to a new place we're being introduced to, a marvelous place, Goshen. Goshen. And this Goshen place is going to be where we will be preserved. Now, this is part of the plan that Joseph, the Messiah figure, has. He's not going to introduce us into Egyptian society to become a part of it. He is going to bring us down there. We're going to be in the belly of the beast, but we're not going to become like the beast. We're going to be in Goshen. And Goshen is this place of supernatural provision and protection. And the things he promises will be in Goshen we will be close to him, Karav. We will be near to him. We will be close to Messiah. I pray that in your times of difficulty, in your times of exile and even captivity and even bondage that you have experienced, this you are very, very close. Messiah is very, very close to you. He is not so far that you say, I can never reach him, I can never achieve him, I can never attain unto connection. He is right there. He's just a whisper away, a whisper of a prayer, a meditation on the Torah, a blessing of the Holy One away from you at all times. Remember that. It's going to keep you sustained and alive. So then we have Yosef and Yaakov actually reunite. The father and the son, the father and the children, the heart of the father turned to the child heart of the child turned to the father. We have this beautiful reunification. It's prophetic of so many things in the latter days. And then we have the delegation actually comes face to face with Pharaoh, with the forerunner of the beast, and we sense this very cautious interaction. There's no boasting. There's no declaration of "you're blessed to have us here." There's no accusation of wrongdoing, though there were plenty to be had. There was no scandal revealing. There was no acting like some sort of a arrogant prophet saying we're right, you're wrong. They came very humbly and they spoke exactly what I call an activated Goshen protocol. And Goshen protocol is a guarded communication that is wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove. And this is part of Messiah's teaching. So they they brought it about. They activated this covenant protocol of Goshen protocol. And then, as that happened, Pharaoh let them go their way. He consented to sending them into Goshen, as opposed to incorporating them into his cities and his projects and his plans and his programs. He let them go, and the device was it was truth, but it was truth with a point. And the point of truth that they said was, tell Pharaoh when he asks you what your occupation is, what you're good at, what your vocation is, what you're skilled at. He says, tell them you're shepherds. You've been shepherds from the time of your Genesis when you came about, that you're all shepherds, because you see, shepherds are an abomination in Egypt. You see, shepherds involve something that Egypt cannot handle. Shepherds involve care for their sheep. And for groups that are under their supervision and under their protection. And in Egypt, everyone is under the supervision and protection of the state, not of individual shepherds. They're not entrusted. He said, you must understand, we are shepherds. And then as soon as they said that, Pharaoh says, okay, you can go to Goshen. We don't want anything to do with you in that regard. Maybe you can tend our sheep, but that's all. And that was a strategic plan. That was part of the Goshen strategy, or the Goshen protocol that was activated. And so then we see in the latter part of the Parsha, Yosef beginning to implement the programs that will in fact be the foundation of the beast kingdom. Yosef is not doing this for the beast purposes. He is doing this because he has a vision for starvation and suffering. The ones who follow after, whenever Yosef is no longer alive, the ones who knew not Yosef, and they also knew not the vision of the Pharaoh, they will come along and they will misuse all of these programs, all these things that Yosef implemented. Was he took control of all land on behalf of the state. Land use. It had to be used for the purposes of the state. Now, that looks really good at the beginning, and for someone who has a heart for people, this could be really beautiful. But this is where communism gets its power. Whenever they own everything, the state owns everything. And if they're not benevolent, if they are selfish, if they are short-sighted, then this is a very... And then they took all the currency, all coinage, all silver, all money became the property of the state, and it was then allocated out. This is part of the beast in-game one world order plan, whenever it's used for control purposes as opposed to blessing purposes. And that's what we always see with man when they're not in covenant with the Creator, or in touch with someone who is flowing in covenant with the Creator. So they take all the currency out of circulation, so to speak, out of the people's hands. They only give them back what they want. They increase the power of centralized government. Government is an institution of man, and if you can understand, there is no good in it. The only good in it is whenever the Holy One can use it for benevolence. It is, in fact, it's a Tower of Babel. It's that. It is not something to be admired or loved. It is something to be understood, and praying into it that the Holy One will do good things through the process. So they take all the property, they take all the money, they take power over every person, and every person now becomes a dependent in the latter years, whenever the loss of a vision of suffering and human suffering takes place, and just it becomes all about power. When that takes place, then every human being in Egypt will become a slave of the state and dependent upon the state, so that they will glorify the state, value the state, and not rebel against the state, not in any way act on their own. Entrepreneurship will be completely done away with. Everyone belongs only to the state, and all their income belongs to the state, and all their property belongs to the state because they don't have any. They just got what was given to them. And so this will be another aspect of that. They take away, then they break down all of the other attachments other than to the state. Your family attachment. Children are basically wards of the state. And the state and the village knows better how to raise your children than you do. It's more than just children. It's about culture. Your culture must be subservient to the greater culture. They begin to wreak divisions between different ethnicities and different cultures in order that everyone will rely upon the state to be able to bring peace or bring some level of order into the process. This is the beast's kingdom, the one world order. This is the anti-Messiah message of the data. And this is going to be manipulated by the beast in the latter days. But then we see this Goshen strategy, that even in the midst of these things happening, even in the midst of all that going on, the people of the covenant are kept safe in a strategic location as long as they follow Goshen protocols, as long as they shepherd one another, as long as they do what they were created and designed to do. And in the process, they will be put in a womb, as it were, or in an incubator, and they will become a great nation in this process. So that's what our Parsha of Vayigash is about. I would like to then move on to another aspect. What are the challenges we face? As we enter into a season, I want to speak to you, beloved, with an understanding, incomplete understanding, but an understanding that the times that we are entering into now, the prophetic times that are being signaled to us by this Parsha and by the seasons of creation, are telling us that we are about to enter into a season whenever we are no longer in control. We are a minority, the covenant people I'm talking about, those who love the creator of the universe and seek to serve him and do his will and live lives in accordance with his Torah and his ways. We are a great minority, and we cannot dictate, we cannot try to assume we are a silent majority somewhere that controls and rules the countries in which we live. Americas, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, France, Israel, even for that matter. I mean, I'm sorry. And the present nation of Israel is in the same status. Same with America, same with all of North America, like Canada, down to Mexico, South America, all the countries of Africa. What we're seeing is all these places of our exile, the Philippines, the places where we are in exile, we are no longer, assuming we ever were, we are not the majority. Though therefore we are in Mitzrayim. We are in the place of straits. We must activate Goshen protocol. Now, activating Goshen protocol is a matter of your mindset, is a matter of your focus and your priorities, as much as it is a matter of physical length. It's a matter of honoring and glorifying your relationship with the creator of the universe above all things, including money, including health, including your own life. It is a matter of honoring your brothers and your sisters and not turning them in or rebelling against them or being angry at them or holding on to grudges or offenses against them, even though they disagree and make mistakes and do bad things and even do evil. The idea is we are covenant people and we must go to Goshen together, and we must begin to flow in Goshen protocols. We have wise as serpent, harmless as dove communications. We stay calm. One of the gifts of the covenant is we have the ability to not respond to aggravation, not respond to irritation, not respond to persecution, not respond to outrage the way the rest of the world does. And so part of Goshen protocol is remaining calm and focused on job one, which is to be the sons and daughters of the covenant. We are not here to direct the governmental affairs of the nations in which we serve. We are here to live life and to be a shining light in a small area, and he will let the Holy One do what he does. He trusts him to do what he's going to do with it. We are being governed. We will be governed by people we do not trust. We should not trust. We should love as human beings, but we should not trust. We should not follow blindly. We should not somehow become advocates for them. We should not, they're going to rise and they're going to fall. And therefore, the time is important for us. These seasons of Goshen protocol are to learn how not to get absorbed into a movement of a particular leader or not, or to be frightened by a particular leader or not, because you see, our purpose and our calling and our nation building that's going on is irrespective of those human beings. They may help, they may hurt, but that will not ultimately make any difference. We are who we are by virtue of our covenant with the Creator of the universe and our faithfulness, fealty to His covenant. Now, part of our Mitzrayim that we are entering into, the season that we are entering into of difficulty and tribulation, is that we will be accused of every crime. We will be the scapegoat of the culture in which we live. They will blame everything, the economy on us. They will blame unrest, civil unrest on us. They will say we're privileged. They will say all sorts of crazy things about us. They will try to invoke all sorts of historical reinventions against us. They will twist the truth of history against us in these different ways. And our job is to stay calm, not overreact, and not be offended and not be shocked by all these things, but to maintain, to keep going steadily forward in the kingdom. We will be held accountable for how well we do this. Accountable in the culture that we live in the nations that we live in, but more so, much more importantly, we will be held accountable by the Holy One himself. We are to begin to really activate Messianic protocol, to begin to do what Messiah would do in every situation, to begin to follow the instructions of Torah because we trust them, and they're our North Star that we can navigate all sorts of situations through. It's nothing is as it appears. We must stay toward the North Star, otherwise we'll be disoriented, we'll go the wrong direction. It's a navigation tool. The Torah is our navigation tool as well as our zone of protection. We are blessed to the extent that we stay in the Torah. I'm not talking about eternal salvation at this stage. That's not even an issue that I'm discussing. That issue will work its way out as long as we stay close to the Messiah and the Holy One, and let him teach us his Torah. Now, the other thing is that we will reap what we, and we will reap it in great quantities, more than we sowed. So be careful what you sow into the world at this particular season. Be careful what words you speak, what negativity of a demeanor you project, what depression you may be willing to indulge or talk about, what profanity will come out of your mouth, what uncleanness you will allow your body, your mind, your soul, your family to indulge and to absorb of the cultures around you. We will reap what we sow. We will reap it in our own personal lives. Our children will reap it. Our wives, our husbands, if you're a woman, will reap it. Our families, our households will reap it. So this is critical that we enter into good reaping stage. It's reaping what is, when a sower went forth to sow, what did he sow? The seed of the word of the living God, the truth, the wisdom, the things that are of the Torah. We are to meditate on it day and night. We are to speak of it when we sit in our home and when we walk by the way, when we lie down And when we rise up, we're to bind it as a sign upon our hand. Let it be a symbol before our eyes. We're to inscribe it on the doorposts of our houses and on our gates. We're to meditate on it day and night. And then we will become like a tree planted by the rivers of living water, which brings forth its fruit in its season, and its leaf also shall not wither. But whatsoever it does shall prosper. This is our testing time. This is our time to see who we really are. Are we really people of the covenant? Are we really willing to stay calm and not give in to our emotions and our sentiments and our sensuality and all the things that draw us away from His plan for our lives and the testimony He wants us to give to the world? Or are we true? Are we in this thing? Are we with Him? Is He with us? Are we working together with the Holy One to bring good out of every situation? Are we willing to put away condemnation and trying to control, manipulation? Are we willing to forsake narcissism and self-interest and self-will and self-deny instead? And to say, for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of the creation, for the sake of the grand plan of the Creator for redemption and for restoration that I recited earlier in this, are we willing then to deny ourselves and take up our execution stake, as it were, and follow the Messiah, doing what He does, saying what He says, fulfilling His plan? We want to reap a harvest at the end of days. We want to reap a harvest in our own families, in our own bloodlines, don't we? So it all depends on how we sow in the meantime. This is our challenge. This is a difficult season of time, but we will make it through this. Okay. A couple about, and then we'll quit. The land of Goshen. Do you have a safe place? Physically, geographically, that is an important question. Some of you do, some of you don't. But I'm not necessarily just restricting this to a safe place in a physical, geographical sense. Do you know where the shadow of the Almighty is? Are you conversant with it? Is it your natural home? Is it where you feel most in the shadow of in the secret place of the Most High? This is our Goshen. Our Goshen is the place where we can have this conversation running at all times. I think Shaul referred to it as seated in the heavenly places in Messiah Yeshua. This is our Goshen. Are you connected to a Goshen? Do you have a Goshen protocol? Or are you just trying to survive day by day here in your land of exile, which is turning rapidly into a land of captivity and persecution and destruction and one world order government? Do you have a Goshen? Do you have a place where the Holy One meets with you, where He spreads His wings over you, where He teaches you and trains you in the protocols of walking out the covenant in real time in difficult situations, which is where it matters the most. Anyone can try to live out the covenant pretty well when everything is going well. It's when everything is going to pieces around you and you still walk in shalom, and you still walk in joy, and you still walk in truth and righteousness, and you still love people even though they don't deserve it. That's where the covenant matters and has its most impact. So, Operation Goshen, we will dwell in the land of Goshen, and we will be near to Yosef. That's the two first protocols. Us and our children and our children's children. Now, this is important to us. It is not just a personal relationship. We are to draw and build a culture, build an atmosphere, a safe environment around our children and our children's children. We don't have control of that at all times, but when they're in our presence, when they are with us, when they're in our homes, when they are in our cars, when they are with us, we have a responsibility to make this a safe house, an Operation Goshen protocol, that we become spokesmen of the King. We are like Joseph, like Messiah to them, and the Messiah is like him to us. And we treat our children, our children's children, And it says our flocks and our herds and all we have are also to be in the same mode. Everything that we have is about serving the Holy One. It's not about serving Pharaoh. It's not about serving our government. It's not about serving America or Australia or New Zealand or South Africa or Zimbabwe or France or England or America. It is not about that. We are here to serve the Holy One. All things that we do are done to the glory and to the honor of the Holy One. Do all things as unto the Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach himself. That's what we do. So all of our flocks, all of our herds, every possession that we have, everything we have is not for our personal enjoyment. It is to bring about the kingdom of heaven. It is an investment tool into the kingdom of heaven. He says, then when you do these things, I will provide for you. I will sustain for you. The Hebrew word is kul, kof, vav, lamed. And it means to sustain in place, to provide for, to take in. It's almost like that picture of what Yeshua longed to do with Jerusalem. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, city that kills the prophets. How I've longed like a hen to spread out my wings and bring you under my wings as little chicks. A hen does as little chicks. This is the cool aspect. I will do that with you. Do you want, I know you do, you want that for yourself. You want that for your family. You want that for all your neighbors. You want that for everyone that can possibly have it. That's important. But you have to have a vision of an idea, an understanding of what suffering means and where it comes from, where suffering occurs. And it comes from not living the Torah lifestyle, not knowing the Holy One and walking in his ways, not being unified with the Messiah, messianic vision. And he says, the reason I want you to do these things, this is his message to Yosef, from Yosef. The reason I want you to do these things is so I can cool you, take you in, maintain you, sustain you in place, and shelter you, lest, and he has the vision, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty. Whew. For there are still 5 years of famine. We're not breaking free just yet. There will be a time when we come free and we'll be like calves released from the stall. There will be a time when we bring forth, we come out of our Mitzrayim, of our land of captivity, of our land of bondage, and we bring millions and millions with us. And there's a great harvest of souls, and a great harvest of lives, and a great harvest of hope and bloodlines. That will come, but this is not that time. This is our time to shelter in place. And this is the time for the message of Jeremiah chapter 29. The prophet Jeremiah spoke to his brothers. He sent a letter actually to his brothers who were in captivity as they were going into captivity, lest they believe that somehow they were about to be miraculously delivered from it. No, this was part of the plan of the Creator. It would be 70 years. In Joseph's case, it's going to be longer than that. But in Jeremiah's case, he was talking about 70 years you will be in captivity. So pray for the place where you go. Pray for the people of the place where you go. Pray that it prospers. Pray that it has shalom. Pray that wherever you are, that place begins to be a shelter place, a city of refuge, a land of refuge where there is a Goshen. Pray that a Goshen area, district, arises in all your lands of exile, be they Australia, New Zealand, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Great Britain, France, the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, China, wherever you may be listening to this. Pray that your area, before the great deliverance, develops, that God ordains and establishes, and you feed into and invest into a Goshen district that will be a city of refuge, for a region of refuge for the people of the Holy One, even in the deepest, darkest times. For there are still 5 years remaining of the famine. Well, that's all I have time for today, this morning. I hope you've been blessed. I hope you've been touched. I hope you've been awakened, and I hope you're listening to what the Creator of the universe is saying. What a beautiful time we live in, an opportunity we live in to actually shine in the greatest time of darkness, to shine bright light into the greatest time of darkness, and call the world to a different mindset, a different viewpoint, to demonstrate and model shalom, to demonstrate and model joy, to demonstrate and model true, unselfish, unconditional love in the way the Holy One does. This is our time, but we need to learn to be wise as serpents and harmless as dove, not to try to control the politics or the government of this world, but instead to begin to flow and do what we were called to do, be who we were created to be in the midst of every situation. Well, Shabbat Shalom. I hope you were able to hear all this. I don't get a lot of feedback on my right now, so I'm not seeing that, but I bless you. Thank you for joining us. If you would, let me know you were here. Let me know you've been listening. If you listen to this later, please drop your name. I will pray for every single person who puts their name. I do this every week. I pray for your place, your location. I pray for your nation. I pray that a Goshen district will arise in your nation, wherever you may be. And may you be blessed. And Shabbat Shalom.